Everybody, and welcome to another episode and podcast from Analysis.Tech. And boy, have we got a great lineup for you today. So, before I introduce our guest, or let our guest introduce himself, John Huehn, this is the first time ever on Analysis.Tech where we're going to introduce someone and something that I believe our entire industry has been waiting for a very, very long time. And when I say a long time, I mean since the start of computerization. We've gone through a few iterations of this, but never before has this been, I think, not just possible, viable, and now deliverable. It's almost a tectonic plate shift, I think of it, for the future of all enterprise applications across the entire low code, no code space. But more on that in a minute. Rob.
Thanks, Francis. And John, thanks for joining us today. I'm Rob Koplowitz with Analysis.Tech. Lowdown on Low Code is brought to you by Analysis.Tech. Thanks everybody for joining. As always, please, if you like what you're hearing, hit the like button, hit the share button, subscribe. We're always looking for more listeners. John, we have a unique way that we like to start these things off. We call it the Trask story, which is a very subtle reference to something that happened in the movie Working Girl 30, 50 years ago, who knows how long ago. But what we like to do is find out people's backgrounds. How did you find your way into this industry? How did you find your way to Pega? And I'll throw out a challenge, right? Like I think we all know Alan Trefler kind of started by teaching computers to play chess. Pretty cool story. Don Sherman's story started in stand-up comedy. Pretty cool story. So that, that's the bar. John, how did you make your way into this whole thing, and how did you end up at Pega?
All right. Well, my story starts in a call center with a headset on my head, talking to wireless customers at Canada's largest telecom. That's how I started my career. And 8 years into working with that group, I had already ascended into an executive role, and I stayed in that for 4 years, leading their contact center strategy, budgets, and a number of their operations. And I left that company in 2010 and went off to start a company that we called In the Chat, which was a digital customer engagement platform. And that at that time, things like Facebook and Twitter were all fairly new. We started as a social media customer service platform and then extended that into text messaging, into email, into chat. We were an early player with all of the messaging applications, early player in the chatbot space. And really what we were working to do was to migrate customer service off of traditional phone channels onto digital channels. And I ran that company for 9 years, and we sold into typically large scale enterprises in the financial space, the telecom space, and others. And in 2019, Pega acquired that customer service business. And so I joined Pega then. I spent my first 6 months putting our technologies together, and then ran the customer service business for Pega for a couple of years. And then Alan Trefler and I had a conversation and said, how can we take some of these great capabilities that we have in our low code platforms, workflow automation, AI powered decisioning, and make that available to companies that want to build and commercialize SaaS software. So that gave me the opportunity to go into something entrepreneurial again, building a business within a business, and take that out to the market and the companies we're working with today.
That's so cool. We can't wait to find out more about that. Francis.
Yeah, no, we can't wait for sure. And I think, as I said before, Alan set you up for this. It's on our last podcast. And for those that haven't seen the podcast that Alan was on, this is just before Christmas, actually. I really sort of deploy you to go look at that. It's really, really cool. What Alan's story and where we're at today. And I guess that was your introduction as well, John, to low code generally and no code. Because until I joined Pega and my company was acquired in 2016, I hadn't touched this term low code. I grew up in the 4GL world, so I had dreams of something like this happening. But we have been excited about doing this and waiting for bated breath, to be honest, to have you on. And there's a couple of reasons we're going to get to why this is so different. And I did set it up to be a high bar at the beginning for you, but I genuinely am not just passionate about low code, no code, which everybody in the world knows, but just what you're doing here. So you are the chief of Launchpad IO at Pega Systems. So that in itself is worthy of a description. I think there's even a dedicated website for this, right? I mean, that's how serious Pega is taking this. So what does this really mean? Give our audience a rundown, we say low down, but a rundown on low code, what it means to you, and Pega and the low code community? Because I think that this is an important aspect of why you're here doing this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, Pega has a 40-year history of workflow automation and AI-powered decisioning that typically gets deployed in some of the world's largest organizations, helping them build for change and solving some of their most significant business challenges. And we do that in a low-code way on a low-code platform. And what the Launchpad, evolution of that is really a whole new product, a whole new platform that leverages, that legacy from Pega and brings it into a space where that can be used by software companies who want to build and commercialize their SaaS software, and giving them that in a low code environment that enables them to do that faster and more cost efficiently than they've ever been able to do before.
So would that be considered like, what used to be, and again, and Rob, you can keep me whole here. In the old days, very old days, we used to have ISVs and go choose not an operating system, but a platform of some shape or form, right? And go build an application and then be paying that vendor in perpetuity, but they would benefit from someone else putting the platform together, and all they had to do was to build on it. And then there were lots of nuances around that. There's like multiple versions. Well, let's just say hundreds and hundreds of versions that ISV had to maintain, and it just became kind of more spaghetti code, but maybe more modular spaghetti code, but spaghetti code legacy debt all the same.
Yeah, so let's drill into that a little bit, John. And I always like to. It's always interesting to me, kind of, to go back. It's a bunch of old guys on the call here, right? So we know where all the skeletons are buried, and some of them are buried in your headquarters building, right? So that used to be a Lotus building, many years ago. And I think about like Lotus Notes in the 1990s. They had like 6,000. They had like 6,000 ISVs building solutions on top of their. So maybe a little DNA still left in the walls. But I think from a bundling and go to market perspective, that was always additive on top of Lotus Notes licenses. You guys are going in a very different direction than we've seen other sort of ISV focused offerings in the past, and certainly a very different direction in terms of your licensing and your market that you're trying to sell to here. Can you take us through that, John? Because this is pretty gutsy.
Yeah, so I would just frame it Launchpad, to say that Launchpad is an end-to-end platform for companies that want to build, workflow-centric, largely B2B SaaS applications. We want to make it possible for those companies to invest as much time as possible in developing their IP into a product and being able to take that product and spend their time, in go-to-market and driving adoption. So what Launchpad offers is holistically the platform on which you can build. It comes with your cloud operations already built into the platform. It comes with your database already built into the platform. And at Launchpad, we manage that for you. You don't need a large operations team, a cloud ops team to manage your scalability. We auto scale that. Everything comes, ISO certified, SOC 2 certified. So everything that you would want to build on is there. Then we have, the workflow capabilities that Pega is known for built into that platform. And then we have a whole bunch of the low code capabilities that you would want to use to be able to build efficiently, so that you don't have to have as significant a development organization, to be able to commercialize or to build your applications. And then all of your multi-tenancy management, subscriber management, that's all built into the platform as well. So the companies that are building on Launchpad, these are companies that want to take IP, build product, and get that to market, but they really don't want to spend the time. We kind of take all of the non-competitively differentiating architecture and work out of your, need to address, and we make that available to you so you can just build the product and get that to market quickly, cost effectively, and focus on the commercialization side.
And John, you did this under essentially a different brand or an adjacent brand, right? That's a big move.
Yeah, I think we love our Pega heritage, and we tie into that greatly. Launchpad is a different product. It is a new platform. It is specifically for a different market, which is the companies that are looking to build and grow and commercialize their software. So versus Infinity, which is incredibly well known for, helping organizations to build for change and address, significant challenges that they have, but really building inside of their organization and deploying inside of their organization. This is for software providers that want to build and take software out to their broader organization. Different commercial model, different market, different use cases, and different sizes and scales of companies than, have traditionally known Pega.
But getting into that whole, all of those patterns of things that Pega has traditionally built really well. That's all part of the model and part of our foundational capabilities,
Absolutely.
which are generally pretty hard to build from scratch for an ISV, and pretty hard to sort of find interesting licensing opportunities.
Yeah.
So cool. Hey guys, let's take a quick break. So Lowdown on Low Code is brought to you by Analysis.Tech. If you like what you're hearing, please go back, listen to some of the previous episodes. Maybe in particular, John is our third guest from Pegasystems, right? So
Yes.
we've had Don Sherman, the Chief Technology Officer, and Alan Treffler, the CEO and founder. Great episodes, but a lot of other great content out there as well. And if you'd like to engage further with Francis, myself, John Reimer, the godfather of low code, Dave Marcus of formerly UiPath, K2, Andy Bartels, our chief economist, Rick Greenwald, who runs all of our data practice here. Please hit us up on analysis.tech. We'd love to hear more from you. And there's actually some really cool research out there that you can get access to as well, just by signing up. So, hey, back to you, Francis.
Yeah, no. So, John, I think, when I was at Pega, obviously I got to spend, I don't know, it was like 7 years, but I got to spend a lot of time with the different development teams across all of Pega, across all the layers, whether that's layer cake or whether or not that's constellation and all the things that go with that. So I think what you're saying is all of that comes over into this new platform. So that's exciting. But the real thing here is that what we're seeing in the industry, I think now, whether everybody's buying into it or not is yet to be seen. The idea that businesses, and you hit on something, they don't need to compete like they used to. When the computerization era started and rolled forward for the next 30, 40 years, all the IT teams in each organization, even if it was one bank versus another bank, they had a completely different IT team, completely different choice of hardware, operating systems, network packaging, languages, all that shit. And so we've got, I don't know, billions and billions of lines of code, maybe more lines of code than there are stars in the universe. I don't know, but way too much stuff that we've had to deal with for the last 30 to 40 years. But now we're seeing things like Pega, but AI generating code. Now, I'm okay with AI generating code. Rob has a different opinion sometimes on that. But as long as it's creating code that's standardized that I don't have to look at or touch, I really don't care. But one of the things Pega has is a proven model. There's no doubt about it. You've won many awards for the model application development platform you have in low code. And so what I'm excited about is this going to be the start of people recognizing you don't need an IT team to build a very rich, powerful application. And in fact, the ISVs that buy into this will not only accelerate getting their applications to market with much smaller teams, but their clients who would be buying this software would also benefit all the way up the chain, from the cloud implementation, the security, the governance, etc. So can you explain, is that the heart of what Launchpad's all about?
Yeah, I think that's a really great categorization, Francis. I mean, the way I think about it is, no matter how your application is developed, if you code from scratch or you code through low code or you code through AI, ultimately what we want is to be delivering outcomes for our customers. And that's what the true objective is of everything that is being delivered by our software providers out to their subscribers. They want to achieve outcomes. And if we can help our providers enable their subscribers to achieve outcomes in a faster, more cost-effective, more efficient way, then I think there's nothing but goodness for that in the entire ecosystem, for the providers themselves and the subscribers that they're taking that out to.
But if we look at that Pega model, one of the things it's always been strong at is, and I know this very, very well, is the ability to build variations in the software, not within the code, but within the layers, right? So now you're extending that to the ISVs themselves, so that I almost think it means like when Salesforce started with the message, what, no more software. That was a great model, maybe before its time, but they're not standing still either. But what you're doing is giving the ability for the next 50, the next 1,000 Salesforces to start up. If someone's got an idea for a B2B application, why wouldn't you build it in Pega? Or why would you build it in Pega? And that's, I guess, what you're going to meet. You must be meeting people all the time. Why would I want to build it in Pega? I'm going to go build it off in Python or Java or whatever, or some other platform. So you're entering a competitive race to some degree, but I also don't think there's a lot of serious competitors in it. Would you agree, Rob?
I would agree. Yeah. I mean, I'm super interested in hearing what John has to say, and then in the follow up, I want to talk about like what is the art of the possible in this new world. So anyway, but John, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go back, Francis, to some of the things that you were talking about on the why Pega components. And I think, the first part of this is some of the parts that you've alluded to that come from the rich history of Pega, our center out architecture that enables you to build, from the center out, not building in your channels and not building in your data, but building a layer that enables you to, build your application and then deliver that application across any channel, whether that's on self-serve on your website or in a contact center, or even in a face-to-face interaction. However, your customers are going to engage with your application, you can build once and deploy that across all of those channels. And I also like, when we think about subscribers, and you mentioned, it sounded like layer cake discussion for us, Francis, you remembering back to your Pega days, subscriber management is another key element of this platform. And what we want, our software providers to be able to develop is applications that are repeatable. Like SaaS applications are typically repeatable applications that you make available to multiple companies that they're going to be using in a multi-tenant environment. But we also recognize that the companies that we're working with, the providers, sometimes their subscribers have somewhat slightly different needs as you move from subscriber to subscriber. And our layer cake lends itself very well to subscriber configurability and the ability to give some power over to the subscribers to say, I want to use this application and the core functionality of that application, but there are specific elements of this application that I want to modify to specifically meet the needs that I have as a unique subscriber to that application. So I think that some of the value that you're familiar with in traditional Pega absolutely flows through, into Launchpad in that regard. But the other component of that is you're building that on top of a full end-to-end platform. We enable you to build those capabilities and to get, your workflow built out, but also providing you, your full cloud, your full database, your, all of the architecture and infrastructure that you need to build and run this application comes out of the box and is included with what you're acquiring with Launchpad. So it makes it very, very easy for companies that want to build applications. They have, the infrastructure that they need to start building. They have a low code way to start building that, a lot of pre-built components that folks can just implement and directly, integration connections or build out on the platform to get that live, and then make it very easy for their subscribers to ingest that and to be able to do that in a way that they can still, customize that to each individual subscriber where needed.
I think the key here is getting this message out because we understand this. We've had a technical briefing as well. We understand this. I think that there's some nuances here that what we try to do at analysis.tech is to normalize some of the terminology, right? And I think Pega's got some interesting terminology that since leaving Pega, I find very much that it's not very many people understand. As much as you go to great lengths to describing things like layer cake or case management, these things, I think this is what we do at analysis.check to try and normalize that to say, what do we really mean? Because for me, I'm an application development, software development guy, but I hate code. I've always hated code because code implies that IT team that I need. I love IT. They got your back. They make sure that everything's right. But when it comes to code, you ask for something, they build it. It's not quite what you want, but then like, well, too late. I mean, I'm not exaggerating too much. And then you end up, well, okay, so we'll go buy something else or we'll customize that. And then you end up with this spaghetti sprawl of legacy debt that strangles organizations. And we'll get to what that means to private equity in a moment. But I do think if we can get our audience to grasp what this really is, and I mean, I'm an evangelist because I personally love this approach, and I don't think there's many people that really understand it. But we could see hundreds of millions of users over the next few years become low code users without knowing that they're low code users. This
Right.
is the future of software, and it isn't about bigger and bigger IT teams or trying to compete because we chose the better operating system or we configured the right database or we chose the right cloud. This is about getting on and building the applications that business and users need and being able to adapt and adjust. And to me, this is like the platform of platforms, which is not very common in this industry. Over to you, Rob.
So I've got a couple of things I want to follow up with here, John. And one is I want to hit on the AI question, and then I want to hit on sort of like that along with Launchpad, how that changes the art of the possible about who will be delivering applications in this new world. So thing one, you mentioned that it was fairly recently that you talked to Alan about launching this new offering on the part of Pega. But fairly recently in AI years is kind of an eternity, right? So, what has changed, from the time you kind of got started on this initiative to where we are today with regard to AI encroaching on the opportunity or enhancing the potential opportunity?
Yeah, I think the evolution of generative AI has been pretty exciting for us. I'm sure that you folks both know, like Pega has a 20-year history in what we call left brain AI in some conversations, really the analytical, predictive, propensity, related types of AI, that folks are used to in marketing and other solutions. So Pega has a very strong background in AI and bringing AI and automation together in a logical way, that we've done over the past 20 to 40 years. So the setup for us thinking about AI as generative AI came online and became available, I mean, that was nothing but exciting for us. Now putting the right brain side of AI together with the left brain, where we're creating and we're generating things through AI. So I think that the AI story for us meshed really, really well and came together very quickly. Both in terms of how we make AI available to our providers for their builds, and then how our providers make AI available to their subscribers to be able to achieve the outcomes that they're looking to achieve in that fast and efficient manner. And I think just Francis talked about the market landscape a little bit. I think, over the past however many years, 20 years of SaaS, 25 years of SaaS, lots of companies have built solutions on what we would now call legacy tech stacks. They kind of broke, other solutions or had to cobble together their own solutions to be able to deliver multi-tenancy and the applications that they might have. And Launchpad provides that all holistically. I think one of the great AI advances that we've brought to market very quickly is Blueprint. And you guys probably heard about that when Alan was on here as well. Pega's Blueprint really enables you to take information or even just, a line that you write up about the application that you want to build. But, you can add as much detail as you want to that. And that the Gen AI then says to you, okay, great. This is what we think about in terms of the personas that are going to use that application. This is what we think about in the workflow that needs to get developed for that application, and other elements around the application that need to get developed. Starting from that spot, whether you're building a new application or moving a legacy application over into our world, makes a huge difference. If I can take my user documentation of my existing application and feed that into Pega's Blueprint and get a blueprint of my application that I can then ingest into Launchpad, I've got like 50% plus of my application built just leveraging Gen AI to get started in building that. So when we talk about being able to help companies move quickly, to get to market and cost effectively to get to market, the Gen AI, ingestion process, I think, is something that has really, really helped. And then once you're in building that application, then the Gen AI again can be assisting in the development. We have, our Gen AI connector that's already built in that enables you to connect with a number of LLMs to build inside of our platform. So whether it's helping you to code up what it is that you're developing, or whether we're leveraging those LLMs to actually get work done for subscribers, review and approve my application, complete my claim, whatever that might be that we make available to subscribers, Gen AI is really helping to make a lot of that easier. And Launchpad, having already come with an AI background, makes it very, very easy for companies to get started and leverage that power very quickly.
A lot of this stuff in my mind, low code, the ability to use Gen AI and things like Blueprint, as a starting point, the ability to have a platform in place already that I can build, it short circuits the time from, it short circuits the time and the opportunity to get from idea to execution, right? So I don't have to go down to, Sand Hill Road and court the VCs and figure out how to manage data and figure out how to hire, my programmers and build out a security model and get the certifications. Now I can move in this world from, I have an idea. I'm a business person who understands business problems, and I can build that, and I can actually now sell that. And that's a very different bar to hit than the old bar. So, John, with that in mind, you started businesses in the past. Anything floating around in your head that you say, man, I've got a great business idea and I can execute on it in a much more efficient way than I ever could have in the past? Francis and I have some ideas.
Yeah, no, I have many, and I'm glad to share. I mean, I was at an event the other day, and folks were talking about where we think Gen AI really, helps, and it was a much broader Gen AI conversation. And taking it out of the software space just for a brief moment, I said, what I really want in my life, from AI is the combination of AI and robotics in my personal life. I'm interested in personal robotics. I want to be able to say to, AI and a physical capability, I want you to make my dinner and I want to have a chicken dinner tonight. And I think like today, a lot of the Gen AI stuff would be like, I can craft you a recipe and I can, tell you where to get the ingredients. I may be even able to buy those ingredients for you to go and pick those up. But what I really want is, the capability for, the outcome I'm looking for is my chicken dinner. I'm not looking for the way to get the groceries and all of those things. What I want is the robotics capability, the automation capability to come together with the AI capability to actually help me achieve my outcome. So instead of talking about like individual ones, like what I get excited about is like, I want the AI and the automation capabilities to come together to do my taxes, to conduct my audit, to process my claim, to do those types of things that, again, as a software provider, I can make that available to companies that need to be able to do those things. And those companies want to be able to do that in a far more cost-effective and faster way. And as a software provider, I want to be able to build and deliver that to them in a far more cost-effective and efficient way, faster way.
And faster, and getting the subject matter expert closer to the execution because it's so complicated. Francis and I want to build a tool that someone could use to come to a website and say, what is the best low-code platform for my organization? And be able to walk people through a complicated set of conditional logic and not have a graphic come out at the end that says, here's the leader based on my throwing lightning bolts from the clouds, but to say, what is the right answer for you and your organizations and your unique needs? So that's our idea. And maybe Launchpad plays a part in it. Hey, Francis, back over to you. Let's kind of get things wrapped up a little bit.
I think we did discuss, and that will come out in terms of the differences, maybe in a deeper dive on this for our audience. But I think I think Pega is very clearly what type of applications it wants to build and what it does not, because there's a whole argument around AI for productivity, AI for application development, and I think they're so far different. I really don't care about the productivity one so much because there's enough people playing in that game. But I want to pick up on a couple of things. One is we are very strong on what we say. So any organization, and Pega's not unique, that has a really good model, right? It goes back to the model. And I know Alan doesn't like to call it the model because it's a low-code platform. It's all the words you use at Pega. But for us at Analysis.Tech, we think of it as the model. And if you get the model right, you can inherit AI across the model without worrying about the things like security and, well, you always worry about them, security, governance, and all the things that go with it. Because if you're already secure and governed and humans are protected, then your AI can't do any more than what the humans could have done anyway. So I think the benefit of inheriting from a model to accelerate, and that's why I think Pega and a few other vendors like yourselves have accelerated their true AI use cases as opposed to let's try this, and it sits over there in a corner and then it starts falling on its knees. But I want to bring us back to a couple of things that are very close to my heart. So when I first heard about this, and I only spoken to some of your team as well, I know a little bit of what you guys have said, so I'd like to hear from you, is that over the last 2 decades, a lot of private equity and VC firms have invested in legacy software application development platforms or just applications. And the reason is because there's no more development going into it. There's a shitload of code, right? Which we try to automate the shit out of, but that's another story. But there's a ton of code out there that for the private equity, they could just keep milking maintenance fees in perpetuity until the thing finally dies on its knees. To me, that's a really good target market for something like this. An application that's proven, it's got a lot of domain expertise within the organization, maybe a bunch of people getting ready to retire. That's one area. And the other area is to attract the VCs that this now exists. That when you invest in an organization that's looking to build an application, they don't have to look at their watches and say, all right, well, in 2 years' time, we expect you to have your first sale. I mean, you are accelerating the ability from ideation, I think that's what Rob was trying to say, for a business idea into an application in very short order. Can you confirm or deny that? Is this really going to change the game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I love to talk about the private equity and VC space. I mean, these are folks that are deploying capital into the development of applications that we expect are going to deliver great benefits. If I can deploy that capital into the development of applications that requires less investment in what we would consider to be the non-competitively differentiating elements of applications, then I'm going to be excited about that as a VC. I really want you spending your time investing in what's differentiating about your application and what's the unique IP and how we're going to stay ahead of the market and how we're going to get that into the hands of users through our go to market. So the venture capital and the private equity markets, as we're engaging with them, have been great groups to connect with, because either they're deploying new capital and they want to see how they can get the biggest return on that, or they have portfolio companies that as you identified, Francis, have built on legacy, what we would consider to be legacy tech stacks. They were built before the dawn of AI. They were some of them were built before the dawn of low code. So they're looking for ways that they can as those technologies have been built up with tech debt and historical issues, how can I get the next version of our product or some enhancements to the product done on a platform like Launchpad that minimizes the expenditure and increases the speed at which we can move through. And I think that the space has also changed a lot. People talked traditionally about IP. If there's one thing that AI is doing, it's making it much easier for lots of companies to build similar looking technology. And so when you're in a world where the competitive market is increasing that quickly because folks can so quickly build what somebody else has already built, the ability to, again, to focus my resources on the next thing instead of, just the infrastructure or architecture, is a big play for them. So it's been an exciting group to connect with over the last little while.
No, good. I'm glad we're aligned on that, because it's certainly something very close to my heart. I haven't raised a lot of money in the past and built companies and sold them like yourself. So, I mean, it's interesting. Before I hand over to Rob and wrap this up, I'm curious as to, do you also believe what we see is a lot of competition? You could say noise. There's a lot of noise. There are, like I said, AI can generate code. There are lots of model application platforms. A lot of platforms trying to come up. Even AI can generate applications now. Just tell me what you want. I mean, Blueprint's a bit of that, but there are other people proclaiming that. Well, I think there's a lot of work to do to get through this noise, to accelerate the opportunities that Launchpad and products like Launchpad have. But I also think that message needs to be really honed and clarified for the different markets that you're going after. It's not like you're going after a bank, but I would point you to a bank that kind of has done this as a bank, which is Starling Bank. And I know I put something in the chat. I don't know if you've investigated, looked at what Starling Bank have done, but Starling Bank came out of like, we've given up on banking software. We're going to go build ourselves a model bank in a model application platform, not with the intent of reselling it, which is what Launchpad's all about. But ultimately what they did, it was so powerful as a model, they spun off the bank so that the model, the platform is now run as a go. If me and Rob decided to want to go open a bank, we could run a bank using their model platform. So it's proven itself. It can be as big as you want it to be. So as we wrap up, Rob, any last thoughts?
I don't want to open a bank, but that's
No, me neither.
I'll throw that out there. Hey, John, I think our audience is going to be really interested in finding out more. What's the best place for them to look and find out more about Launchpad?
Yeah, Launchpad.io is the website to get to learn about Launchpad and go and see what the capabilities are. I think the other part that's interesting that we haven't touched on is the commercial model for Launchpad is a usage-based model. It's a subscription usage-based model, which again aligns well for folks that are looking to build software and take software to market. You're investing against what you're using in the platform. So we try to make that something that's very scalable for the companies that are building with us, on top of providing a platform that helps them otherwise manage costs and get to market quickly. So
that's very unique for Pega, isn't it? Yeah, that's very unique for Pega. That's a change, and I think it's a necessary change for this model.
And I think it's unique for everybody, right? Sort of getting away from that old licensing model and saying, if you're going to be successful in building an ISV channel on top of your platform, you're going to have to think about licensing in a fundamentally different way. So Launchpad.io, we love URLs
the
that
last thing
also.
I'd mention, Rob, for folks that you said, where should they also get information? There is a session on Launchpad at Pega World in June of this year. So folks that are going to think about coming to Pega World, we'll invite you to come and learn more about Launchpad while we're there as well.
If you're going to Pega World, make sure you learn about Launchpad. If you were undecided about Pega World, maybe Launchpad is the reason you need to get yourself down there. And listen, thanks everybody for coming today. Thank you, John. Always appreciate the audience tuning in. More information about analysis.tech at analysis.tech. More information about Launchpad at launchpad.io. And thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you again next week.